a place where an Eastern tale comes to life, or a fairy tale prison for 1,000 women. What was the Sultan's harem really like, beyond the Turkish TV dramas and romantic fantasies? And what would your day look like if, just for a moment, you stepped into the chambers of the legendary beauty, Hürrem Sultan? Today's video is all about the splendour, luxury, cruelty, and court intrigue of the magnificent century. Welcome back to Female Tales. I'm Yulia, and on this channel, we explore the lives of remarkable women throughout history. If history speaks to you, like the video, join our community, and let's head straight into the depths of the past. So here we are again. The year is 1533. Wait a second. Weren't we already in this year last time, as one of Anne Boleyn's ladies-in-waiting? No, it's not a glitch in our time machine. As it happens, our two heroines were contemporaries, and by a twist of fate, both became the legal wives of their powerful husbands in that same year, 1533. The exact date of Hürrem and Suleiman's nikah isn't known, but it's believed to have happened around this time. For Hürrem, once a slave, now a free woman, and the Sultan's lawful wife, this moment marked a truly transformative and joyful chapter in her life. So let's take a closer look. How did Hürrem live now, in her new and elevated status? To understand what your day would look like in the harem, we first need to figure out one crucial thing. What is your position here? Contrary to the popular fantasy, not every woman in the harem spent her days lounging in silk robes and eating delicacies. In fact, the harem was structured more like a strict convent, with clear rules, daily routines, and internal hierarchy. If you're among the odalisques or couriers, the lowest ranks, your life revolves around endless chores. You'd be working in the kitchens, the laundry, or serving higher-ranking women. And if that's your place, then chances are you've only just arrived, most likely a slave, bought at a market or brought from a military campaign, perhaps from Georgia, Greece, Abkhazia, or like Hürrem, from Ukraine or the nearby Slavic lands. Yes, don't romanticize it. Most of these beautifully dressed women were, in truth, no different in legal status from the African slaves working cotton fields. But let's be honest, no one would dare turn the history of black slavery into a love story. And yet with the harem, everything somehow gets dusted with romantic glitter. That said, you were still slightly better off. Women in the harem received salaries, gifts, and in many cases, they could even save money. Funds they were allowed to keep if they ever left the harem. They received a daily allowance of 6 silver coins, which would be roughly equivalent to $18 a day in today's money. As for Hürrem, her personal allowance was 2,000 akshi per day. That's the modern day equivalent of nearly $6,000 every single day. And in general, the Ottoman system did allow for a certain degree of social mobility, even for those who had once been slaves. Many influential figures of that time actually began their lives in bondage and rose to power through skill, talent, or sheer chance. Take a good look at yourself in the mirror. Because if you're beautiful enough, your role in the harem might soon change. You'll begin training in court etiquette, music, dancing, reading, and writing, all to prepare you for a new title, a concubine, or more specifically, ergoste, the favourite. Funny enough, that was the exact word the ambassador Eustace Chapuis once used to describe Anne Boleyn, subtly hinting at her position compared to Catherine of Aragon. For the Sultan, women of this status were something like one-night stands. But if you managed to catch his attention, or better yet, become pregnant, your days of scrubbing floors would be over. You'd then become an Iqbal, the fortunate one. And if you gave birth to a son, congratulations. Like a well-played level in Super Mario, you'd unlock your next reward. But are you sure you want to play this Game of Thrones? Because in the cruel logic of the Ottoman world, only one prince could survive. If your child wasn't the one to inherit the throne, chances were he'd be killed by his own brothers. Still, if fate smiled on you, and your son did become Sultan, you'd rise to the very top of the harem's hierarchy, the most powerful woman in the empire, Walida Sultan. And if, looking in the mirror, you suspect you're not the Sultan's type, don't worry, you can still build a life here. Many women carved out meaningful roles in the harem as administrators and mentors. you might become a Kaufa, a department deputy, and eventually an Usta, a master supervisor, respected and influential in your own right. So, where exactly does Hürrem stand in this complex hierarchy? Her position was truly unique. She held the title of Haseki Sultan and was the first woman in Ottoman history to bear it. In fact, this title was created specifically for her after her marriage to Suleiman. The word Haseki meant something like exceptional or belonging exclusively to the ruler. And if we were to find a familiar equivalent from European history, it would likely be the role of a queen consort. But Hürrem was so much more than a title. She broke rule after rule, becoming the first freed slave in over 200 years to marry a reigning sultan. In many ways, she was a woman of historical firsts, challenging traditions and reshaping the very structure of power in the Ottoman court. Let's assume that today you're starting at the very bottom of the hierarchy. But don't worry, that's actually a rare opportunity, because it means you'll be allowed to enter Hürrem's chambers to serve her. So hurry, Hürrem is not known for her patience. Her mornings began with the dawn prayer, and after that, it was time to prepare her for the day ahead. Now, if you're imagining yourself helping her into a lavish low-cut gown like in the TV series, I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. Ottoman women's fashion at the time was nothing like that. Ottoman sultanas, like Hürrem Sultan, wore layered clothing. You could say they were following the layering trend long before it became mainstream. The first layer consisted of a long silk underdress, gömlek, and loose trousers, çakşa or shalva, topped with a short-fitted jacket known as a zubin. Over that, she would wear a long, flowing robe, either an antari or kaftan belted at the waist. But don't be too disappointed. It's finally time for accessories. Although, again, not quite like what the series showed. Hürrem's choice of adornment would have likely included a jewelled belt, possibly with a small ornamental dagger hanging from it. And on her head, a tall, conical hat, elegant and imposing. By the way, you may have noticed I've shown you a few portraits of Hürrem in this video, but don't trust your eyes too much. We don't actually know what she really looked like. Here's why. In her time, outsiders were strictly forbidden from entering the harem, and since nearly all court painters were men, they had no access to the women inside. On the rare occasions that harem women left the palace, they were fully covered, wrapped in a long cloak called a fares, and wearing multiple veils, including a chador that covered their head and face, with only the eyes left visible. So, every portrait you've ever seen of Hürrem was painted based solely on second-hand descriptions, mixed with the artist's imagination. Still, poetry, especially Suleiman's love poems, and reports from Venetian ambassadors offer us glimpses of her image. They describe Hürrem as bright, light-skinned with strawberry red hair and a charming, smiling face. Here are just a few lines Suleiman wrote for her, under the pen name Muhibi. My woman of the beautiful hair, my love of the slanted brow, my love of eyes full of mischief. I'll sing your praises always. I, lover of the tormented heart, Muhibi of the eyes full of tears, I am happy. And now, it's time to accompany your mistress to the harem gardens, where she can enjoy a walk with her children. At that time, she had two, Shehzadeh Mehmed, born in 1521, and Hürrem Sultan, who was born the following year. The very fact that Hürrem was allowed to bear more than one son was already a break from one of the oldest and strictest rules of the imperial harem. One concubine, one son. In the TV series Magnificent Century, we are shown 5 children born to her and the Sultan: Shehzadeh Mehmed, Selim, Bayezid, Cihangir, and Hürrem Sultan. But historical reality was a little different. Some historians believe there may have been more children, but due to high infant mortality, their names simply never made it into the records. For example, it's known that there was another son, Shehzadeh Abdullah, who died at the age of 2. Naturally, that part of the story was left out of the series. By midday, you might accompany Hürrem to her noon prayer. Yes, women in the harem prayed regularly. There were 5 daily prayers in total. And now it's time to serve lunch to your mistress. But be very careful. Meals in the harem followed strict etiquette. Hürrem would dine in her private chambers, seated on cushions around low wooden tables. You would begin by offering her a pitcher of rose water to wash her hands. Then bring out the utensils. But this time the Ottomans were already making good use of spoons. Interestingly, the Ottoman diet was much more balanced than what we see in Tudor England, where meals were mostly centred around meat. In contrast, the Ottomans enjoyed soups, grains, and vegetables. And of course, no meal was completed without their famous sweets like baklava and sherbet. And around the 1530s, something new was introduced to the palace: coffee, which would soon become one of the empire's most beloved drinks. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any reliable sources on Hürrem's favourite dish. In the TV series, they claim she craved quail during her pregnancies, but whether that's true or not is unclear. So if you happen to know what Hürrem liked to eat, let me know in the comments. And now, it's time for Hürrem to get down to business. Don't forget, just like you, she once entered the harem as a slave. And yet, she became a literate, articulate and politically savvy woman. At first, scribes helped her put her thoughts to paper. But soon enough, she was writing letters herself, especially to Suleiman when he was away on military campaigns. 7 of her letters have survived, and here's a fragment from one of them. Full of fire, longing, and poetic drama. After bowing my head to the ground, and kissing the soil your blessed feet have touched, my son, my fortune, my sultan, if you ask how I am the one set aflame by the fire of longing, whose heart is burned, whose chest is torn apart, whose eyes overflow with tears, who no longer knows night from day, lost in the sea of yearning, mad with your love. But don't think Hürrem limited herself to poetry. She also conducted serious political correspondence. One of her letters went to King Sigismund of Poland, others to the Venetians, the Persians, and even the Habsburgs. She had her own seal. And when Suleiman was away, which he often was, she signed important state papers on his behalf. Suleiman spent nearly a decade of his reign away from the capital on military campaigns. And during those years, Hürrem was essentially his most trusted representative. She influenced appointments of key figures, from Grand Viziers to even the Sheikhul Islam, the empire's top religious authority. As the ambassador Busbek famously wrote in 1555, even Suleiman's worst critics could find no greater fault in him than his complete submission to his wife. What truly set Hürrem apart from other women of the harem was her active role in public life. She financed a large public soup kitchen in Jerusalem, a mosque and school complex in Istanbul, Hazreti Sultan Emaret, and even the famous bathhouse in the heart of the city, which still bears her name to this day. And that's just a few of her many charitable and architectural projects. So if the TV series gave you the impression that Hürrem spent all her time arguing with Mahidevran in palace hallways, you'd be mistaken. But that doesn't mean those rivalries weren't real. In fact, conflicts between Hürrem and the mother of Shehzade Mustafa were quite serious, and even recorded by Venetian ambassador Bernardo Navagero, who once described a physical fight between the women in the palace corridors in his letters to Rome. Still, Hürrem was far from an innocent victim in these power games. Most likely, she herself plotted intrigues and conspiracies within the harem. Many believe that the fate of both Ibrahim Pasha and Shehzade Mustafa, both executed, was shaped, at least in part, by Hürrem's hand behind the scenes. Of course, the final decisions were made by the Sultan himself, but her role in shaping them is hard to deny. Her duties for the day complete, Hürrem can now turn to the gentler side of harem life, music and poetry. To impress her, learn to play instruments like the oud, a type of lute, or the kanun, similar to a zither, and memorize a few Ottoman songs or poems to perform aloud. Women in the harem also spent time doing embroidery and needlework, crafting exquisite fabrics used in the palace or given as gifts. Some of them enjoyed games like chess or checkers, both of which were popular pastimes in the Ottoman Empire. And now, it's time to escort Hürrem to the hammam. After all, she's expected to dine and spend the evening with the Sultan tonight. the Turkish bath was not only a place for cleansing, but also one of the most beloved forms of relaxation and socializing. Within the harem complex at Topkapi Palace, there were several baths. One for the Sultan, one for the Valid Sultan, and shared baths for the concubines. On certain days, groups of women would visit the bathhouse together, turning it into a kind of ritual gathering. Now it's time for you to finish your duties and quietly step away, because the hour is approaching when the Sultan will come to Hürrem's chambers. According to Ottoman protocol, a different concubine was typically chosen each night. But as you now know, for Suleiman, Hürrem became his one and only woman, and all of Istanbul was whispering about it. It's no surprise that the gossips of the time, puzzled by the Sultan's unwavering devotion, spread rumours that Hürrem must have bewitched him, that she used love potions and magic to win his heart. But now that we've spent a full day in Hürrem's world, we know the truth. Her influence came not from spells, but from her intelligence, charm, and from Suleiman's own willingness to make her not just his lover, but his partner. Hürrem is considered the first woman to usher in the era of the Sultanate of women, a period when the wives and mothers of sultans began to wield real political power. And while this term is often used in a negative sense, as something that supposedly led to the empire's decline, I personally don't think that's fair. Because we know, women like Hürrem were exactly the kind of people history needs. Someone has to be brave enough to change the rules of the game. So, would you want to join the Sultan's harem? If yes, you might get a similar experience on The Bachelor, competing with other gorgeous women for one man and one pair of pants. Just kidding. The story of Hürrem and Suleiman became one of the most legendary love stories of all time. But behind the palace walls were hundreds of broken lives. Girls who weren't lucky enough to fall in love, or to make the Sultan fall for them. That's why today we should cherish our freedom, our voice, and the right to love whoever our heart chooses. Tell me in the comments, who else would you like to spend one historical day with? See you in the next video.